All righty. Well, let us transition into a discussion about our peers. Peers are getting more and more important with every stage of life. So let's talk a little bit about how, with age into the middle childhood, we have more opportunities to meet more different kinds of playmates and different people who could become our friends. It's expanding. So, just like we talked about with early childhood, common activities are really important. I found a picture of some kids at summer camp, right? Like this is an opportunity to meet kids that you probably never otherwise would meet, is to go off to a summer camp where people from all over the place are coming together into this one place. Having these kinds of common activities that are coming from a larger geographical area. This is what happens throughout, early childhood. It's like your little neighborhood. By middle childhood, you're starting to get into maybe your town or something. By later, into adolescence, and then for sure by college, you're really starting to spread out and really start to expand where you might find people as a function of your common activities. So a variety of different kinds of people from common activities. Again, friends are really going to be really often kids will report that the people who they consider friends are people who they feel affection for, that they like, that they think are nice, right? Like these are all words to describe affection. And so friendships are going to continue to be based on that kind of affection. They're going to be based on support. This one obviously is like actual support where they're using each other as a chair while they play the demo game at GameStop. But I meant more like psychological support is what I was meaning to refer to. And so this is going to be consistent, and it's going to continue throughout life. And then that fun word that I love, propinquity, having access to a person. So while these girls might have made friends with each other while they were at summer camp, honestly, their best friends are probably the ones who are in the neighborhood or go to their same school or wherever they see them frequently. Having, access to your friend is really super important. Although I just watched an episode of People's Court where these two guys have been friends for the past 15 years, just playing video games online together. And the first time they literally saw each other's faces was while they were at People's Court. So that was kind of surprising. So maybe it's not always about propinquity. Although, I think they felt like they had propinquity because they were seeing each other all the time. And they apparently thought that was friendship. Now, again, overarching all of this, notice that these pictures that I've found of these friends online are, they share a lot of physical characteristics. It could be sex, it could be their basic age, it could be their race, it could be their style of dress. But you'll notice as we're getting older and older that people tend to pick, as we're going through the lifespan, people tend to really feel the most affection towards and the most support from people who really are similar to them in very basic ways, right? That are very physical characteristic based. Now, how do we act with our peers? All right. Well, I'm gonna share with you some research findings on how popular kids behave with their peers versus how unpopular kids behave with their peers, and I think you'll see some differences here. Popular kids talk more. Now, whenever I say that in a face-to-face class, I get kind of a surprise reaction from some of the students. And I think what they think I mean is talking endlessly. I don't mean that. But they're more likely to answer their peer's question or ask their peer a question. They engage in conversation. They aren't withdrawn. They aren't, really quiet. They tend to engage in the conversation. They take turns directing and following. So sometimes they're in charge, sometimes they are the person who takes orders. Most people don't want to always be told what to do. A lot of people would like to always be the person telling everybody else what to do. I think that's a more common perspective, but what makes it more fun to be around a person is if we each get to sometimes take a turn being in that leadership role. And popular kids tend to do that really easily and naturally. They realize that, okay, well, I got to decide last time, it's your turn to decide, something like that. They tend to smile more. You'll notice that in this play thing, which might be all staged anyway, but smiling. Popular kids tend to smile more. It's something that our species does to indicate, I'm a safe person. I'm happy to see you. I actually had a colleague that I ran into the other day, and I smiled at him. He goes, "You're always smiling." And I go, "Well, because I'm always happy to see you." And he was taken aback for a second. And he's like, "Well, that's a nice thing to say." And I said, "Well, that's why I'm smiling. I'm happy to see you." "Oh, okay." They're more likely to offer a hand or toy, right? Like you can imagine this as a grown-up person that you are thinking about who do you like? People who are helpful, people who are nice, right? People who aren't bossy and, let you have a turn being bossy, right? Like these are things that we all like, even as adults. So maybe as an adult, you're not looking for a toy, which maybe you might be because some of us like to still play, but you might be looking for just help with something you're working on, or company while you go shopping, or right, like this is what we look for in our friends, and this is what popular kids naturally do. They know to offer, they know to engage. Unpopular kids are more likely to fight with their peers. They're more likely to stand on the sidelines of a game and wait for someone to invite them. I just want to mention, a lot of us harbor a lot of grudges from when we were children. We all had things where we got slighted, or somebody bullied us, or picked on us, or made fun of us, or made us feel isolated. Children are pretty self-absorbed on average, and so if they're busy playing a game, they probably, if they notice their peer at all on the sidelines, think that the peer is enjoying watching the game. It doesn't even occur to them to say, oh, hey, Fred, come on in here and play. But the unpopular kid oftentimes will stand on the sidelines waiting to be noticed, and then when they don't get noticed, they take it as a slight. They're more likely to be overtly rejected by their peers if they are disruptive to what the other peers are doing. And sometimes you'll see unpopular kids sort of take the key thing that everybody needs for what they're doing. So I take the crayons, or I take the ball and I run away, and it's ruining what the other kids are doing. And the disruptive kid thinks, well, I'm trying to engage with them, and nobody's happy. They're more likely to be rejected if their behaviors are aggressive, if they push, or they yell, or they take something physically out of somebody's hand, things like that. They're more likely to be simply ignored if they're shy. Anybody who's listening to me who was shy as a child knows that this is true. If you're shy, you're just hoping somebody is going to talk to you, and you're just hoping that someone will help you to get involved in the game. And for the kids who are already involved in the game, they're not even noticing that. They're not. The kids who are playing are not trying to hurt the shy child. They're just not even noticing, and that's way hurtful. You're more likely to be ignored if your behavior is withdrawn. Like I always call it a kid who wants to be jollied out of what they're experiencing right now. They want other kids to go, hey, what's wrong? Well, why do you feel like that? Well, talk to me, what's wrong, right? Like they want other kids to do that, but again, they're probably going to be ignored, not be out of malice, but out of, the natural self-absorption of childhood. The other kids are playing. So these are some of the behaviors that we tend to see among unpopular children. And you'll notice that a lot of those behaviors are not mean behaviors or bullying behaviors. They're a lot of times just sort of not confident enough to insert themselves into what, in a positive way into what the other kids are doing. A popular child will approach an existing group and say, hey, what are you guys doing? And just assume that they're welcome in. Sit down. Hey, can I do it too? Are there any crayons for me? Right? Like they'll talk, they'll take their turn, they'll smile when they're approaching. And so these social skills really benefit them in the long run. All right, how about coping with anger? Popular children versus unpopular children. So typically on average when you compare popular children to unpopular children, we'll see that popular children handle their anger generally well for their age, right? Like there's age-related outbursts of emotions and things that we would expect. But on average, popular children cope well. They tend to be much more direct in their expression that, you hurt my feelings, or that's not nice, or I was using that. They're much more direct, and then they're more active in their expression of their anger. That hurt my feelings, right? Gives the other person to say, sorry, I didn't mean to. Hey, that's mine. Gives the other kid an opportunity to give it back. Oh, I didn't know, right? Like it gives them an out, a face-saving out when they've done something wrong, to say, oh, I didn't know, or let me give it back, or things like that. Really what these actions do is they help to minimize what could become conflicts, right? They maintain the relationships. They don't say, hey, you jerk, you loser, why'd you touch my stuff? They just say, hey, that's mine. And so it maintains relationships. Now, boys who are popular tend to express their anger. They say things like, much more directly. They may say things even angrily, right, to their peers. But these are direct and active ways that a lot of times allow the thing to be resolved without having some kind of major conflict. If their peer is provoking them, like let's say the peer has taken the kid's cap off of his head and is dancing around going, you can't get it, you can't get it. A popular boy tends to not take that bait and tends to be like, give it back. All right, fine, I'm just going to do something else. I don't care about my stupid hat. And then that sort of loses the power of having stolen my hat, right? Like they're much more just sort of naturally able to diffuse tense situations. With girls, when they get angry, they tend to express their disapproval for whatever behavior had made them angry. So they might say things like, don't cut in line, or that's cheating, or that's not fair, right? They'll express disapproval for the behavior that the person has engaged in. Again, that gives them a little bit of an out. That's not fair, you cut, no cuts. These are things that can, I'm invoking a rule. And so I'm not saying you're a bad person, you're awful. I'm saying that behavior is not acceptable, right? So again, it helps to diffuse anger. It helps to avoid conflicts and maintain relationships. Now with unpopular kids, they're more likely to hit when they're angry. They're more likely to tattle when they're angry. There's nothing that the child group hates worse than a tattletale, right? Especially the 8 to 12-year-old phase. They hate a tattletale. And so if you go running off to get the adult to help you, that's going to make you less popular. Now, us adults will always tell you, just tell us and we'll come intervene. But, that's not what you do in the child culture. That's for sure, right? Unpopular kids tend to take other people's toys. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I was just trying to get you to play with me with it, right? They aren't trying necessarily to be mean, but they don't know how to get engaged in the play that other people are engaging in. And so then they do something because their feelings are hurt, like take toys. My feelings are hurt because you won't play with me, so somebody's going to take the toy. Here, this picture is supposed to be this little girl bullying this little boy. A lot of times unpopular kids will try to gain status by bullying other kids and shaming them and making them look foolish in front of their peers. So it doesn't make them popular, but it can get them some, what they call it in the movie Christmas Story, toadies. Little, like some peers will hang around with the bully and make the bully feel like supported and things like that. And so unpopular kids, sometimes they'll get the wrong impression that they are popular because when they bully kids, they get this sycophantic group of people who hang around them and like that. But they're lashing out as a bully sometimes because they feel slighted because nobody likes them and they're trying to get people to like them. But sometimes nobody likes you because you're a bully, right? So it's kind of a circle. Childhood's hard. So let's talk a little bit about families and their role in popularity. Children tend to be more pro-social with their peers than they are with their siblings. Sometimes parents worry because their kids get into spats at home and they think, oh my gosh, is this how they act at school or with their peers? And probably not. You can let your hair down when you're at home and, you can maybe hold it together when you're with your peers. And so sometimes you see kids behaving with their siblings in a less desirable way than you would probably see them doing with their peers. One thing is if you have a domineering sibling at home that really picks on you and things like that, you may displace that frustration onto peers at school and you become a bully. So you're trying to get that tension out and you're doing it on the weaker kids at school. So siblings sometimes can be the source of bullying behavior at school. Now, parents who have popular children tend to have warm, positive relationships with their children. They tend to implement authoritative parenting, which we talked about a lot in the last age bracket. And they tend to teach as a direct lesson to their children how to cooperate and also how to be assertive and stand up for yourself in an assertive and non-angry way, right? To how to say things like, hey, that's mine, things like that. Parents of unpopular children, the mothers oftentimes lack confidence, and so they may second guess themselves and give sort of inconsistent feedback about what behaviors are right and what ones are wrong. They may not role model assertiveness for their children, and they don't tend to encourage independence as much as parents of popular children do. Mothers of unpopular children oftentimes kind of like their kids being dependent on them and like kind of doting on them, and so they don't really encourage their kids to take risks. A lot of times mothers of unpopular children are anxiously attached to their children, right? That anxious ambivalent attachment that we talked about in infancy, they are still having that sort of, I want you to be independent, but I don't want you to separate from me, so I don't really want to encourage it, kind of mixed messages. Fathers of unpopular children oftentimes are, even when they are physically present, don't pay much attention to their kids. They look oftentimes at child rearing as woman's work, and so they don't get involved in sort of those nurturing moments that happen when you bathe your children or you help them with their homework or other things like that. So distant fathers can oftentimes be associated with their kids having social skills that aren't really up to speed, and so then they have difficulty making friends. All right, let's go ahead and take a break here. We'll come back in the next segment and talk about aggression.